I think the greatest challenges in African-European relationships today is that there is controversy about what the African continent is and what the African continent stands for. Every day that I scroll through my social media, I see all these videos of when they ask people to name one country in Africa, and someone says Wakanda, which is a fictional place that the Western world created as a figment of what African culture is and what Africa is, which is not the reality. I think this is the biggest challenge we have. It's because on the African continent, we are told so much about Europe. From class, from school, we are told all about their culture, their language, the history that we are associated with when it comes to colonialism. But they don't do the same on their side, which creates a huge gap on knowledge and information, whereby now people are racist, people do not understand what the African culture is and who the African people are. I see so many videos on the internet of people asking people, oh, do you ride buses, do you ride elephants to school, or do you have clean water and safe water? I cannot deny the fact that many African children and many African people are not as privileged, so some things are scarce and are limited to some people. But then the misinformation that lies out there about the African continent is so abstract, and it's very annoying for someone who knows that that's not the reality of what Africa is. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, this information gap that makes Africa look as if we are struggling, we are failing, and the whole world just takes that impression of what Africa is without necessarily wanting to learn more about Africa. I think that's the greatest challenge between the Africa-European relationship in general. Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. Do I think that African countries should look elsewhere in cooperation? Africa in general has a long history with Europe. So I'm from Uganda. We were British protectorate, and the relationships we built with the Western world have significantly evolved with us and have molded who we are as a country. So it comes to our constitution, our currency, the languages we use in our country. English is the official language in Uganda. So it's going to be very difficult for me to say, you know what, we should cut Europe off, because practically speaking, you cannot do that, because we have a deep root. We are deep rooted with the European world, and we have learned all these things that have come with the Western world. What I could say is that Africa should learn to become more dependent. So it's not necessarily cutting off, because we need people, we need nations, we have to learn to work together. But at the same time, Africa should learn to be more independent as a continent, because we realize that we are our own people and we have our own beliefs, and that if we still continue to be strongly dependent on Western nations, it's going to become very difficult for us to have an incentive of who we are, because our identity is being eroded by the fact that we let all these nations infringe their ideologies and their cultures and their beliefs. I understand that learning is important and we should understand other people's incentives, but the mistake Africa is doing is that it takes everything without sieving out what necessarily we need as a continent to grow. And I think that's one of the biggest problems as to why Africa is not growing. It's because we are too dependent on systems that don't necessarily work for us. Yet we could be better if we actually decolonize our minds, if I could say from my African studies class. The specific field I feel Africa and Europe should incorporate is agriculture, because I believe agriculture is a major sector on the African continent that should be amplified if we have any hopes of growing economically as a continent. So Africa in general has so many resources when it comes to agriculture, and many young people don't necessarily get the chance or the opportunity to tap into, because the education system in general tells them that it's not cool to be a farmer, or it's not cool to go into agri-tech. So I think agriculture could be a very popular and a very big incentive when it comes to, production and industrialization, because with agriculture, so many other sectors grow, unemployment levels automatically drop. So I thought Africa has not fully utilized this particular sector, and we can use it predominantly to dominate the food industry across the world.